Hello again, everyone. This is Steve Callis of the Powell Memorial Alumni Association, and we're here with our continuing efforts to interview all the Power Hall of Famers. And today we have a very special guest, Coach Brendan Malone, who is actually a three-time member of the Power Hall of Fame. He's in other Hall of Fames, like I know, for example, the CHSAA, but at Power, he came in individually. He came in as coach to the 72 team that won the city championship, the basketball team, and also the 1976 team. So the coach has a lifelong career in coaching, a 30-year career in the NBA, and it's just great to welcome Coach Malone. And Coach, we're going to start with the first question. Where'd you grow up? I know you're a Queens guy. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to elementary school? Tell us about your early life growing up in Queens.
Yeah, I grew up in Astoria, Queens. My mother and father were Irish immigrants, and they made a great pick when we moved from 34th Street to 45th Street. It was a new tenement, a row of tenements, and it was right across the street from a playground and PS10. And in PS10 there was an alleyway where we played a lot of ball, and we didn't have a TV, we didn't have a car, I didn't have a bike. I was living in the streets, and I was always in the park playing either softball, stickball, or over in the basketball courts playing basketball, or on the streets playing roller hockey. And I played roller hockey an awful lot. And when I was about 13 years old, I tried out for the Pee Wee Rangers in Madison Square Garden, and I was the first kid picked because I got on the ice first. And I was skating and skating, and I felt a touch on my shoulder, and it was Phil Watson, who was a Ranger. And he asked me my name. I said, Brendan Malone. He says, how old are you? I says, I'm 13. And he says, go over there and sit down. And he picked me. And I also played the first Pee Wee Ranger game. They had us play in between periods on the Rovers. They played on Sunday afternoons, and I scored the first goal. I can still remember it to this day. It was a one-timer. I received a pass from the right. I don't know how to describe it. I shot the puck in the lower left-hand corner of the net, and there I am, Brendan Malone, star. And that was my aspiration, by the way, Steve, when I was a kid. Oh, and I was picked for the All-Star team to go up to Canada, and we played up in Nova Scotia. And my aspiration was to be an NHL player. And I played up until was about 16, up until my senior year at Rice, when I played in the Metropolitan Amateur Ice Hockey League for the Sands Point Tigers. And while I was doing that, I was playing basketball as well, CYO for the Elks and the whole bit. And I, in my senior year, I went out for basketball at Rice, and I made the team, but I rarely played. I was learning the game, and then when I went to Iona College, I played. Didn't have a scholarship. I played freshman basketball, and I was playing a lot, and but I'm still learning how to play the game. And I played for Artie Wilkins, who liked me. He had a lot of interest in me. As a matter of fact, in between classes, he had me come over to the gym and work with me on back to basket moves. He thought I was going to grow to be about 6'6", but that never happened. But he was very patient. In my sophomore year, I went out for the varsity and made it. And at one time, I got we had like 15 guys on the team. I was in the top 10, and I was ahead of some of the guys who had scholarships. But in the my junior year, I was cut. I received an injury playing touch tackle in the park, and I cut up my knee. And Jim McDermott cut me. But I kept on playing intramurals. And then when I went into the Army, I kept on playing and I kept on getting better. But the one thing that I always think back at, I started grammar school in January, and I went to Rice and I entered in January. I was like a year behind maturation, and I always felt that had I been like a year later, I would have had more successful career as basketball on the collegiate level. But as I don't know, when I left the Army and I kept on playing, where I played every Sunday, Precious Blood Parish in Astoria, they had a gym. I was from St. Joseph's Parish, but they didn't have a gym. And we would play for every parish in Queens, but in Brooklyn, as a matter of fact, we won the Queens Brooklyn Championship. And as I was playing, Father Brady came up to me one day and he asked me if I would coach his junior team. And I said, sure, I'd be glad to. And I really got involved in it. And we won the championship, the Northwest Deanery Championship, 2 years in a row. We beat St. Rita's, who had been dominating. And that's what got me going into coaching was the Father Brady asking me to coach his CYO team. And from there, I went on to go to school, got to NYU to get my master's in physical education. I had a BA in history from Iona. And while I was going to NYU, I called up Brother Malone, who taught me at Iona, if I could work at Power as a physical education teacher. And he hired me to be the chairman of the physical education department. And that first year, I coached baseball. Kevin Riley was the baseball coach, but he did it in a haphazard way. So when I got the job as a baseball coach, I went into the locker room to see what equipment we had. And we had a couple of broken bats with nails in them with tape on them. We had a Pan Am bag with one stirrup with balls that were all taped up. And I said, whoa, Power didn't have that much of an interest in baseball. So I went, I got money from Brother Sirignano and I went over to Astoria to R&M Sporting Goods store. And I got Nellie Fox and Jackie Robinson model bats, thick handle bats. So it would bat control, but also the bats wouldn't break as quickly. And from that point on, the best baseball program started to grow, and you were a part of it, a vital part of it. But the first pitcher I had was Paul Bijou, a tall left-hander who was very good. But I got from your area, Julio Alonso, Mike Smith from the Hell's Kitchen, Jim Buggy from out in Queens, Tommy Langan from Queens. I had a lot of good pitchers, and I had good catchers as well. And we started to compete. We beat St. Peter's out in Staten Island to get to the finals against Mount St. Michael's. And I can still remember the game. We had bases loaded, and Larry MacGyver got up, who could really hit, and he could hit with power. And he hit a shot out to center field. He just missed hitting a grand slam home run by a fraction of an inch off his bat, and we lost that. But that's how I got into baseball that way. But in basketball, I was very fortunate that I coached at Power because we had a wealth of talent as far as basketball is concerned. Kids from Gator Heaven Parish out in Queens, guys from Brooklyn, Manhattan, and my first year coaching the JV team, we won the city championship, beating Malloy, and we beat Brian Winters in St. John's, and Brian Winters went on to fame in the NBA. As a matter of fact, I think he's in the Milwaukee Bucks Hall of Fame. But we beat them, and after 2 years of coaching JV team, Jack Cunit, the previous head coach, took a job down in New Jersey, and his travel would prevent him from continuing coaching. And Brother Sirignano elected me to be the coach. And my first year, it was a struggle, But the second year, we won a city championship, and then we won another one. Matter of fact, the first championship where we beat La Salle, and and on our team was John Candelaria, who went on to fame of throwing a no-hitter against the Mets. He was a very good baseball player as well. As a matter of fact, when he played baseball and he pitched against us, I don't know if you remember Henry Casals.
I do.
Henry Casals hit 2 home runs off of Candelaria, and I still think those balls are still going somewhere. And because I always wonder about Henry. When he heard about John Candelaria, he said, "Oh, I should have been a major leaguer because I hit him easy." But but we beat Candelaria at La Salle, and then we later on beat Tolentine for the city championship. And it had a guy named Charlie Brown, and they were very well coached. And after we beat Tolentine that night, I got a call from Dick Stewart, who had just been named the head coach of Fordham. And I think it got me at the right time, in that I think I was getting burnt out at Power, and he asked me if I would be his assistant for him. And the next day I said, meet me at my office around 6 o'clock because I have baseball practice. And when I got back to the office and he was there, we talked about my role and all that. And it was a precipitous decision. And in retrospect, I should have taken a little bit more time thinking about it, because my relationship with Dick Stewart didn't work out all that great at Fordham. But I got a job with Yale the year after, and I had a great time with Yale, coaching the freshman team and assistant varsity coach. And from Yale, there was Rick Pitino was the assistant coach at Syracuse, who I had a relationship with. And he took the job at Boston University, and he called me up and said he was leaving, and he recommended me to Jim Boeheim at Syracuse. I went up there for an interview, and I coached at Syracuse with Boeheim for about 6 years. All right, and from there, I got the job as the head coach at Rhode Island. I spent 2 years at Rhode Island, and there I interviewed with Hubie Brown in the airport in Providence, and I spent 2 years with Hubie. He told me, and he applauds me for this, of taking a chance, because he was straight up with me.
Now, Coach, that's with the New York Knicks, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He told me he was under the gun. The season was going to start on the road because there was a horse show in Madison Square Garden. And if he didn't get off to a good start, he was going to get fired. He told me that straight up.
Wow.
But when we went in to negotiate my contract, Scotty Sterling, the general manager, said, we're going to give me a 1-year contract. Hubie fought for me to get more money, and he fought for me to get an extra year. And because he fought for me to get the extra year, I was in the NBA for 30 years, because he was fired. And the job was taken over by Bob Hill. He was fired, and at the end of the year, Pitino came in. And then after that, I left that, and I interviewed with Chuck Daly with the Detroit Pistons. And I caught lightning in the bottle, because the first 2 years I was with the Detroit Pistons, we won championships. And that was a tremendous ride, playing with guys who came to work every day, worked hard, worked together, and our practices were harder than the games we played. And from the Detroit Pistons.
Well, Coach, if I could stop you there for 1 sec, you became a mini celebrity last year. I hope you know this, in The Last Dance with the Michael Jordan 10-part documentary. I just want to read the quote that you gave, so everybody knows. You've been given credit for the Jordan rules. I think you simplified it a bit, but I think it was a key to them winning those 2 back-to-back titles. And here's your quote from episode 3 of The Last Dance. On the wings, we are going to push him to the elbow, and we're not going to let him drive to the baseline. Number 2, when he's on top, we're going to influence him to his left. When he got the ball in the low post, we were going to trap him from the top. That's the Jordan rules, and it was that simple. And then when the guy asked you, well, what happened when Jordan went baseline, you said the following, quote, that's when Lambeer and Mahorn would go up and knock him to the ground, close quote. So I think that's, on the one hand, the summary of the Jordan rules, which were so important, but on the other hand, kind of your approach to the game. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's what we're going to do. And if it goes this way, we got plan B. But tell us a little about that, because that must have been a pretty good experience. That was just on TV last year in 2020.
Yeah. I had a history with Michael. I coached him at 5-star. He was a high school coach coming out of Wilmington, North Carolina. And he was better. The first time I saw him, the way he moves, his fluid motion going to the basket. And, sometimes when you see a great athlete, then you stand out. And he was like that. And one thing that he didn't have, and he always had that tremendous competitive spirit when he played. And that's what differentiates him from a lot of the guys who's better than Michael Jordan or LeBron James or Kobe Bryant and all that. But the one thing that separates Michael from his athletic ability is his tremendous competitive drive. And so we've always had a kind of a relationship with him. As a matter of fact, when I was coaching up in Toronto, we finally beat him. But that year, Michael Jordan's team, they won 72 games. And I was coaching the first year up in Toronto with the expansion team. We beat them. And one of the 8 games that they lost. And I was kneeling down in front of my bench, and Michael was right there. And I said, Michael, don't you ever miss? Because he was nailing every shot. And he says, Brendan, you know better than that. And but he finally did miss. He missed at the end of the game when we beat them. And it was like when I played coached up in Toronto, it was a novelty. I had to give a clinic to all the press because and explaining the NBA rules because they didn't know them. And they knew offside, nice in the puck and all that, but they didn't know anything about basketball. And one time I was sitting in the stands before a game, and Frank came up and says, I didn't realize how fast the game was. But we drew like almost 35,000 fans because of that dome. And so after we beat them in that game, I was walking down the streets to an Italian restaurant called La Grappa. And the people, they was dancing in the streets. I'm not exaggerating. Everybody was like pumped up that we beat the Chicago Bulls. But I'm going all over and meandering about my career. But Toronto, I was the first coach of the Toronto Raptors. But I went from UB to with Chuck Daly. And Chuck Daly, I went to Isaiah Thomas, naming me the head coach of the Toronto Raptors. And then I get lost after that. I went to.
Well, after that, you went to the Knicks for 4 years after the Raptors.
I've been with the Knicks 3 different times.
Yeah.
I was with UB. I was with Jeff Van Gundy, and then I was with Don Chaney.
Yeah.
I always get a kick out of when they introduced Patrick Ewing, who I work with in Orlando. And they would say, Patrick Ewing, once a Knick, always a Knick. And I say, they never said, well, I was a Knick 3 different times, and I never got that kind of an introduction. But, speaking about Patrick, he just had knee surgery, and he had a blood clot, but they gave him multiple blood thinners, and he's doing all right now. But so after that, I went down to Orlando with Stan Van Gundy,
Well, Coach, can we step back just a little? Because you went to the Knicks and then the Pacers back to the Knicks, but then you were with the Cavaliers, and for about, I think it was 20 games in 2005, you coached a very young. You were the interim head coach, and you coached a very young LeBron James, who was in his second year, and had already become a star. I don't know if he was a superstar, but give us your thoughts on coaching LeBron in 2005 as the interim head coach.
Yeah, well, Paul Silas was fired, and I was named the head coach. I was very uncomfortable being named the head coach, and because the perception would be I try to get was working behind his back, which I didn't do. And but when I was coaching with Paul, the guy who was the most competitive player on our team was LeBron James. I mean, and Paul was very smart that everything we did was competitive drills because he wanted to win everything. The one thing that he, at that particular time, he did not like to go in the post. He tried to get the ball into the low post. He kind of shied away from. Since that time, he's become a very good low post player. But he started. But the one thing that I will give him is that LeBron is a great coach. Now, people will ask me, who's a better player, LeBron James or Michael Jordan? And to me, the separation is like nobody is going to match Michael Jordan's competitiveness. I mean, Michael and Kobe were two guys that wanted to take your heart, your soul. Like both of them wanted to reach in behind your sternum and pull your heart out. That's how competitive those guys are. Mm-hmm. Now, LeBron is a competitor, but I don't think he matches them. But LeBron is a great player, and sometimes you would rather not compare those great players. But as far as I'm concerned, would be Michael, would be LeBron, and no, it'll be Michael, Kobe, and LeBron. And then I was thinking about this recently. As a matter of fact, maybe a half hour ago. Nobody ever mentions Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the Lou Alcindor Power Memorial.
Yeah.
He scored the most points all time in the NBA. He has multiple championships, and everybody bypasses him. He should be on the Mount Rushmore. And then if you ask people who's going to be on the Mount Rushmore of the NBA, he's never mentioned. But and I would say, who's the greatest player who ever played? It would be Kareem. But I'm meandering around here and talking about great players that I coached, but I didn't coach Kobe, but we played against him after when I was in Orlando. We won the Eastern Conference Championship. We went out to LA, and you could tell right away that the guy who was going to dominate the series was going to be Kobe, and he dominated. He was a great player. So that I've been like, it all started my career in basketball is when Brother McMullen hired me, right, to head up his physical education department, and when Brother Frank Sirignano named me the coach to replace Jack Cunit. It was at Power where it all started, and it was all started because I had the privilege of coaching kids from the boroughs of New York. They were hard-nosed street kids from the city of New York who gave me the opportunity to start my career in coaching that got me to where I am right now, a retired NBA coach after 30 years.
Well, Coach, the last two jobs you had with the Magic and then with the Pistons were all Stan Van Gundy, and I know also Jeff Van Gundy. So you had kind of a relationship, I guess, with the Van Gundy family. I think you told me once that they were like the hardest working guys that you knew. They had a tremendous work ethic. So talk about those final 5 seasons with Stan Van Gundy and then 2 seasons with the Pistons. They were both Stan Van Gundy head coach teams. but I guess that's almost a lifelong, maybe basketball camp thing that you started many years prior.
Well, yeah, it's funny about Jeff Van Gundy. He was he had a his father started coaching out in California, and then he got a job in up in the Rochester area in New York, and so they had to make a major change going from sunny California from the snowy winters of Rochester. But he came down to 5-star, and there's a draft. You watch kids play, and you pick your teams and all that. And Brad Greenberg came up to me and said, if you need a point guard, I have a point guard that's in, they had the NBA, the NCAA, and the NIT section. And he was in the NCAA section. Says, you could probably use him. So it was Jeff Van Gundy. And I used him as the good players played on the second and fourth quarters, and the backups who played the first and third. And Timmy O'Shea was one of the better point guards in the camp, and he was playing the second and fourth quarter. As the week went on, Jeff Van Gundy was playing in the second, fourth quarter because he could run a team. He was very smart. He wasn't as athletically gifted as Timmy was, but you could always tell that he was a smart player. And he so when I got the job at Rhode Island, and I interviewed him because he was working as an assistant at your Rutgers, I didn't pick him, and it's ironic that when I got the job, and when he got jobs, let's say with the Knicks after we were let go in Detroit, he hired me, which was interesting. And then when I was out of a job, I interviewed with Stan Van Gundy at Orlando, and he picked me to be his assistant. And like you said, totally dedicated basketball people, very influenced by their father. And they're very bright, very hardworking. And you can tell that Coach Stan, he had a tough year this year with the New Orleans Pelicans. But you could tell that his handprint was on the team just by how organized they really were. But anytime you went into a game, if you were a coach, you had to be prepared for a Stan Van Gundy team. And
Good man.
They're both very giving, very giving people. They're very empathetic to coaches who are out of jobs. Like when Don Chaney and I were fired by the Knicks, the first night, I got a job from Stan Van Gundy.
Wow.
Jeff Van Gundy. And he invited me down. He was coaching Houston. So I flew down to Houston, and I was with him for over a week as he was in the playoffs. And I was at all his practice and all that. Of course, they were guys who really cared about coaches.
So Coach, if I can ask you one other thing, I read an interesting article in The Athletic from a few years ago that talks about your relationship with Tobias Harris, who at the time with the Pistons, you'll explain it better than I, was kind of an up-and-coming good player. And now he's a max contract guy with the 76ers, who you know are the #1 seed in the East. So tell us a little bit about that, because I know he's a Long Island guy, you're an Astoria guy, and you kind of hit it off. But I found that article fascinating in terms of your relationship with Tobias Harris.
Yeah, it's funny. I got to know Tobias before I ever coached him. We just hit it off. Talked about like in Long Island about him being one. There aren't that many great players coming out of Long Island. He was one of them. Jeff Rulin was another. I think Julius Erving was another.
Of course.
But we always said hello. We always exchanged pleasantries and all that. And then when we made the trade to get him to Detroit, he always would come to me and we would talk about what he would have to do. And that summer, I would drive out to Long Island, and what Tobias would do, he had a gym was a school. I forget what area of Long Island it was, but he um, he paid to use that gym every morning from about 9 to about 12. This is every day now during the summertime, and he worked on his game, and he had a workout guy, and he worked on his 3-point shooting, on his dribble moves, all his skills, and sometimes I would take part in it. And but I would go out there, and I went out there because I respected his work ethic, and and also it was part of my job to report back to Stan Van Gundy and how the progress report. But he is going to sign a max contract because he truly dedicated to getting better. He and I respect it because he just said he put in the work every day. He took off Saturdays and Sundays, but every day he would get in that gym 9 o'clock. I'd be there before 9. He'd come through the door and he was ready to work, and he would work for almost 2 hours working on his 3-point shot. He had to make. He took 100 3-point shots after every practice, and
Wow.
he worked on his dribble moves, his back of the basket moves. I got him to dribble and pass off the dribble going left to try and hit the weak side corner. And I text him up until recently. After every game, I watch him play, and I would text him my observations of his game. And always I would finish it with stay aggressive, because sometimes he would, with Embiid and with Simmons and with uh, other players, he kind of took the backseat to it and said, "You got to stay aggressive." And you can see with Embiid out, his shots have gone up, where he's like scoring in the 20s and 30s. And sometimes you'll see when Embiid is back, he's only taking about maybe 10 shots a game. But uh, very happy for Tobias. Very low key young man. He quiet, and sometimes his game is quiet, and he has to learn to be aggressive all the time. So I'm curious to see how he does in the playoffs right now.
So, Coach, this has been fantastic. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about your lovely wife, Maureen, who has been through all of this, I guess, with you for, I don't know, almost 60 years, I'm guessing. And I know you're proud of all your children. The one that we know is, of course, your son, Mike, who's the coach of the Denver Nuggets and has made them a force in the West, which is still, to me, tougher than the East, depending on what happens with the Nets, of course, if they can get it together. But tell me a little bit about your family. Any concluding words, any thoughts on the NBA today, whatever you want to wrap it up with, this is your time.
Yeah, Michael has done a magnificent job with the Nuggets. Last year, they were down 3-1 against the Utah, and they came back and won that series. And then I forget the other series, but they were down 3-1 in that series and came back and won that. And that was tremendous. And that was a reflection of his coaching. And his hard work, is paying attention to the little things and getting these guys to believe that they can come back and win. And right now, he's on the man. Murray went down with the leg injury.
Yep.
Barton is out, and Monte Morris is his backup point guard was out. He just came back, and PJ Dozier, a rookie, who was a rotation play, he was out. So, but they continued to win without those guys, and so I'm proud of that. Now they're going to play Portland, and Portland's a very good basketball team. And if he had his full roster, I think they would be competitive. And they're playing tonight at 10 o'clock, and I'm curious to see how they come out and play, because they did play the last game of the season in Portland against Portland, and I was very disappointed in their effort. They didn't compete, and I'm curious to see how they compete tonight. But I had Kara Brendan, Kevin, Michael, and my youngest daughter is Shannon. Three of them live in Colorado. My son, Kevin, is an orthopedic surgeon up in Chelmsford, Massachusetts.
Wow.
And my oldest daughter worked for IBM. She was majored in my finance up in Syracuse, and she survived a lot of cuts with this IBM, and she's still working out there. And then the youngest daughter, who has graduated from the University of Denver, has decided she finally found her passion, because she was working in a school, which most of the language was Spanish, but she found out that she liked counseling, so she's going into trying to get a master's in counseling as well. But they're all doing well, and I'm proud of them. And the person who really should get all the accolades and raising them is Maureen, because while I was coaching other people's kids, she was coaching our kids. And we've been married for forever. And I met her on the streets of Surrey, and we've been married. We have as everybody, we have ups and downs, but we survived World War I, II, and III, and still love each other.
That's a fantastic way to wrap it up, Coach. This has been great. People are going to love seeing this. This is Steve Callis for the Powell Memorial Academy Alumni Association, finishing an interview with three-time Powell Memorial Hall of Famer, Brendan Malone. Thanks very much, Coach.
Hey, Steve, but one thing, when I stood up on the stage, when I was inducted into the Hall of Fame, there was a big banner, a Powell Memorial banner, and it struck me. I said, the reason why I'm up here was because of Powell Memorial Academy. It all started at Powell. Maybe it started with Father Brady asking me to be his coach, but the opportunity to coach and to get some sort of notoriety was at Powell Memorial, and coaching young men like yourself, Steve. You always were a delight to coach, and always were very intelligent. And your father, I always enjoyed talking to your father about the game of baseball, because he had a passion for it. But you and a lot of guys like you at Power made my experience at Power an enjoyable one.
I greatly appreciate you saying that, Coach. This is Steve Callis. We'll see you the next time.